All right, let's jump into these things. Again, I'm really not going to try and teach these so much. A lot of them are very self-explanatory, but some of them need a little bit of sort of just, let's think through this. And what's he trying to say and what's he not trying to say? So if you're at home watching this, you probably won't hear most of the conversation, but that's okay. You should be in the room. I'll throw it out there and let you guys kind of chew on it and see some options, what it's going. I'll try and fill in as much as I need to or as I can. And then we'll go from there, okay? So again, you begin with dead flies. It's a good thing. Dead flies make a perfumer's oil ferment and stink. So thusly, is the word there, thus a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. The word outweighs is not in there, all right? It's implied in there. I guess my first question on this is, how big is a fly? When you consider a perfumer making oil or making perfume or making whatever, how big, are they making like a little teaspoon of it? Are they making that much, or are they making a great deal? And yet, one fly lands in there, and what happens? It's all gone. And he backs it up on the back side of that, because he doesn't say, and folly outweighs wisdom and honor. He says what? A little, oligos, oligarchs, small, few, all right? Is a Greek word there. So very few, very little, all right? So it's not proportional to the effect. Think about this. If someone is wise, one is honorable, and yet they slip up in one little area, in one little moment, have just a bad day, what can happen? All that can be out the window, all right? As I was thinking this, the flies destroy it. What are the things you're adding or allowing in your life that are destroying the vast everything? What's the one little thing that you're allowing or adding, deliberately adding or passively allowing, that's being destructive in your own path? And so, and again, a lot of these areas you can think of different. You can think through your faith. You can through your health. You can think through your family life and the health of your family. What are the things that you're allowing in? Imagine those one little areas that can just destroy everything. And this is that idea of the dead fly. The dead fly. We don't want those dead flies in there. All right, because he describes this perfumer's oil. There's a Hebrew word used twice in here, and it's implied that it's precious. This precious oil, this costly oil, is destroyed because of this one dead fly. Okay. 2, a wise man's heart goes to the right, but a fool's heart to the left. And again, I told you can go a little political on this if you need to. So there's some great ads. Just little memes that you could do with this whole. This whole chapter is just full of them. All right. Describe right and left, biblical. In the Bible, how does the Bible use right and left? Is right wrong? Is left wrong? What's that? Jesus is seated at the right hand of God. Okay. Okay. The inference is power. Righteousness. You can go there. Don't throw that word in with that word. Don't think right and righteous, all right? Because one's a directional thing and one's a sort of a legal status.
I was kind of thinking more like Revelation when he separates the sheep and the goats, and how the sheep are on his right and are righteous, and how the goats are on his left.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. But how do they use right hand and left hand? The right hand is your strong hand, right? Theoretically, what's the percent? Anybody know the percentages? Who's right-handed, left-handed?
I think it's 20%.
20, 80, 20?
Yeah.
Interesting thing we learned about twins is a lot of people are mirror twins, and the twin just doesn't survive the first couple of days or whatever. And that's kind of that right and left thing. It's kind of interesting. But think through this. A wise man's heart goes to strength, But a fool's heart goes to, theoretically, weakness. So a wise man will play to his strength. He will go to the place where he's strongest instead of going to the other way. This made me think of Lot. Remember when Abraham and Lot, their shepherds get into a little fight, and they're like, okay, we can't stay together. We're too many. We can't stay together. You pick. And where does Lot go? Lot goes to the green grass in the valley, which includes the cities of what? Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? So his heart, you see what I'm saying? His heart went to the left. All right? Now, he didn't see it as the left, but it turned out to be that weakness, that negative thing. So, all right? That simple enough? Again, you don't have to go political on me on that one. So, 3, even when a fool walks along the road, his heart lacks. And the word sense is added in there. It's not in the text. His heart is lacking. And he shows or tells, this is the Greek word logizomai, which means almost argues. All right? Makes the argument that to everyone that he is a fool. All right? How complex is walking along the road? See where we're going here with this? So even when the fool walks along the road, again, is this a complex activity? It doesn't say even when the fool does brain surgery. No, it's what? It's walking along the road. Okay? Some of you would trip walking down the road. I get that. Okay? But this is a very mundane thing. So just a fool walking down the road, his heart, his cardia or his leb, all right, it lacks. It's lacking. It's so evident that it's just obvious to everyone. And he shows everyone he is a fool, all right? Which reminds me of the old Abraham Lincoln quote. It's better to be thought a fool and keep your mouth shut than to open it and remove all doubt, all right? So it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, how long can a fool keep their foolishness hidden? It doesn't take long, all right? And even in the most mundane areas of life, in walking along the road, he is going to make that obvious to everyone. All right? 4, this is an interesting one. If the ruler's anger, and this is, the word anger is not in here, it's the word for spirit. If the ruler's spirit rises up against you, don't leave your place. For calmness puts great offenses to rest. All right? So let's kind of break this down just a little bit. If the ruler's anger or his spirit rises against you, why would that happen? Why would the ruler's spirit rise up against you? And the implication is in anger. All right? It's to come up against you. So that's generally a bad thing when the ruler comes up to you. All right? Why would that happen? Disobedience, good. Rebellion, what else? Okay. Thinking like the baker and the wine dresser in the dream, all right? What else? It's not a good situation, everybody agree? All right, there's something going on, okay? Now, what is the inclination that you might have when the ruler comes against you? Okay, pushing back. So to argue or to fight back, how will that go? Yeah, that generally doesn't go very well, okay? Yeah, I mean, king especially, all right, especially in this period of time, because the king didn't have to like go to Congress and get permission for anything or the courts. It was just like, no, you did that, you're going to die. All right? How about your employer? If your employer rises up against you, is fighting back a good idea? Is telling him what a horrible boss he is? Shane, how would that work out for you? You've never had that situation, have you? Have you ever had to rise up against someone? No? You're lying. Yeah, you do. I mean, it happens, okay? Even at the church. Good night. It happens here, all right? Um, so what's the proper response? Look at what Solomon says. Don't leave your place. Translate that. What does that mean? Don't leave. It can be translated as abandon, uh, or to go away. This is speaking more almost. I hate to say it geographically, but in the Greek, it's the Greek word topos. We get topography from this. All right. So don't leave. If he rises up against you, almost like stand your ground. In some way, it's kind of what it's saying. It's basically saying, don't retreat, don't abandon, don't run away. Okay, is everybody with me? So if the ruler rises up against you in anger, his spirit rises up against you, don't abandon your place. All right. Now, is that a good thing if you've done something wrong? Do you stand up? I'm going to stand here in all my disobedience. What he's saying is don't run away from this situation. Okay? So if the ruler's anger rises against you, don't abandon your place. For calmness puts great offenses or great sins, that word can be translated sin very easily, all right, to rest. And it's actually the exact same word that's used from leave. So don't abandon your place, for calmness will create an abandonment of those great sins. Is that okay? Everybody okay with that? All right. So ruler rise against you, don't leave your place, for calmness. Anybody have a different word for calmness? Conciliation. Okay. Pacifies. Okay. Any other words? This is actually a medical term. All right. This idea of calmness, in the Hebrew, it's rapha, right, which is the idea of healing. And in the Greek, it's iomai, right, which is to be healed. Okay? So when he rises against you, don't abandon, don't run away, almost stand your ground, because if you can create healing, reconciliation or conciliation, all right, that's why I don't like, the calmness is not a great word here, all right, because in the medical field, there needs to be healing. There's a transaction almost that takes place, all right? So in a situation when Shane is yelling at his employee because they gave him too much brisket and didn't charge him $400 like they charge him now, all right? And he's yelling at him, his employee needs to do what? Say, no, I did this the right way. I put this and I put this in, and what's the ruler going to do at this point? Bosses, those of you that have employee responsibilities, Benny, you've been there. What do you do when your employee responds with calmness and creates healing to this predicament? All right? What happens at the end of the day? Is this a good situation? Yeah. I mean, we've all been employees. A lot of you have been employers, okay? When the person runs away or tries to run away or tries to avoid the whole situation, what happens? That thing is still stuck there in place, all right? Parents, with your kids, does this ever come up? No, all right? Your spirit never rises against your child, and if they just run away and hide, does that fix everything? No, hopefully not. You're a horrible parent if it does, all right? But when there's healing, then those offenses are put to rest, or the Greek word there could be translated as paused or abandoned, okay? So, all right, 5. 5 breaks away from the actual Proverbs and actually sort of sets up the rest of the Proverbs. So there is an evil I have seen under the sun, all right? So he's introducing a new category of Proverbs. An error proceeding from the presence of the ruler, right? Error, anybody have a different word there? Okay, in the Old Testament, it's in Leviticus, it says several times when the community or when someone sins unintentionally. Everybody with me? This is the sacrifice. This is the way you do the sacrifice. So this idea of an unintentional sin. So That's why he uses the word error here and not sin or grievous mistake or something to that effect. This is when the error is committed by the ruler, not trying to destroy, but just as a consequence of poor leadership, of poor decision making, of poor whatever. So again, you can go very political here real quick. So, and this comes because somebody's just short-sighted, right? Somebody's short-sighted. If you've got a boss, a leader, a parent, a dad, father leading the house, and he's just short-sighted and doesn't really think through things and doesn't process things, you're going to get unintentional errors, okay? It's not that he's trying to destroy anything. It's just poor leadership, all right? And here's the effect of these. That's why I said he's introducing this next set. 6. The fool is appointed to great heights, but the rich remain in lowly positions. All right? Now that word appointed, does anybody have the word given there? If you do, that's a good translation. Appointed, you can say he was given a position. Is that everybody okay with that? I always think of ambassadors. Ambassadors of the country. How are ambassadors picked in our country? How do we designate ambassadors to the different countries around the world? Basically based on how much money they donated to the person's campaign. You can check me on that. All right? Most of the ambassadors we have are major donors to that president. All right? Is that the best way to do things? Shouldn't you go, you know what? This person knows the language, knows the culture, knows the environment, knows the economy, knows sort of the ins and outs of this country. This would be a wise person to place in this position. All right? That's how it probably should work, okay? That's not how it works, all right? Feel free to look those up. So the fool, all right, is appointed or given a position of great heights, okay? Now, again, this is an evil and an error proceeding from the presence of the ruler. When he takes somebody and gives them a great height position, all right, you can see what happens. I just saw on the news, evidently there is a person somewhere in I can't remember if it was State Department, but it just came out today, this video of one guy in either the State Department or something that's sort of transgender on steroids, crazy thing, and it's like, wait a second, is this really the person we want in this position doing these things? So the fool is appointed to great heights, but the rich remain, or are literally, it's the word for seated, all right? Yashab or kathizo. They're seated. You go sit over there in that lowly position, all right? So this one is given a place of great height, all right? So it's usually the word hoopsas. It's high. And this one is told, go sit down over here. Now, why use the term rich? Is that the opposite? The fool versus the rich? The fool is appointed a position of great heights in a situation where there's poor leadership. But the rich are made to sit in a lowly position. Jesus kind of used that in his parables, right? Of the wedding banquet. Where should you go sit when you come in? Go sit in a lowly position. All right, the same idea, okay? But are fool and rich, are those opposites? What do you mean by that, Chris? Go ahead. You can unpack that a little bit. True. But the fact that they are rich implies what? And again, exceptions noted. But if they're rich, they probably know what they're doing. All right? I mean, do we want a bunch of poor people running our government? I'd kind of prefer the rich guy who's done well in business and done well in his life because he has evidently, theoretically, maybe a little more wisdom, maybe a little more business savvy, knows how to do things. All right? So that's where he's kind of playing off the fool versus the rich. The one who's done well, the one who's been successful is told, You go sit down. We're going to put fools in place. Yeah, no, and again, like I said, exceptions noted. Exceptions noted, definitely. Okay. Rehoboam, remember him? Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, comes into power, and what happens? Jeroboam comes up and says, "Hey, take it easy on us. We'll worship. We'll follow you. We'll do whatever you want." And what does he do? He goes to the wise ones, theoretically the rich ones, and asks them, and then asks the young fools by definition. Okay, and whose advice does he follow? The young fools, and tells the older rich people to do what? Go sit down. And I'm going to elevate and give prominence to these guys. Okay? So Solomon hasn't experienced this just yet, but I really wish Rehoboam would have looked at this and gone, you know what? Maybe I should think about this parable, this proverb right here. All right? 7. I have seen slaves on horses, but princes walking on the ground like slaves. All right? Now, isn't that a nice thing to do? Isn't that admirable for the prince to tell the slave, come, you ride on my horse, I will walk? Is that an admirable thing? Humble thing? Good leadership? Okay, why is it not good leadership? And again, I got a lot of you guys in here that have had prominent roles in businesses. Is that a good idea? To take your slave and put them in a position that implies authority, implies privilege, implies whatever. You bosses are being quiet on me tonight. And by that you mean how? What do you explain how that might undermine your authority? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, no, yeah, that would be elevated. But this is not so much an elevation. This is more of a, I'm going to get off my horse and he's going to get on. Yeah, there are moments. Others.
You take somebody who's been a slave, who's only done one job, who's only accustomed to one job. In ancient times, that may be something that slave, the only thing they may have ever done was wash floors. And then you turn around and you take him and you put him on a horse. Boy, they have no idea.
How to run the company? Yeah.
Not just how to run the company, they have no idea what to do on the horse, what the stirrups are for.
So this is not so much just an idea of show. This is more of an idea of now this is your role and your title. I always remember the episode of MASH where they have Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, and all the unlisted, is that, am I saying that? The privates and the sergeants switch places with everybody, And it's like, okay, these are surgeons, and now they're being switched, and they're washing dishes and stuff, and now it's which. And yeah, they do fall behind, and they don't understand what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do. All right? So, Scott, if your brand new service guy comes in and he's sitting in your desk with your feet up, is that a good thing? What's going to happen to everyone else in the room? What happens when the boss allows for that type of insubordination? Okay, good, good. All right, okay, let's get one. That was an interesting one. I kind of like that one. 8. I'm going to read 8 and 9 together. The one who digs a pit may fall into it. And the one who breaks through a wall may be bitten by a snake. That's an odd little coupling there, but I'll explain it. The one who quarries stones may be hurt by them, and the one who splits trees may be endangered by them. This is kind of the idea of risk and reward. Right? There are things you do, and they come with risks. So you want to ask the question, should I really do that? Is that a wise thing? And you can see a lot of these things are beneficial things. They're proactively, I think I should do this. This will help. But there's a risk to these things. All right? So obviously the first one, you dig a pit, somebody might fall into it. All right? Now you dug the pit theoretically for a good reason, but you need to pay attention to the risk that's involved in this. The one who breaks through a wall. Okay, this is kind of the idea of there is a protection, a hedge of protection set up around a camp to keep the snakes out. So the one who tears down this wall may inadvertently let the snake in. Again, this is that unintentional sin thing, okay? So you think, well, we should tear down this wall, all right? Or tear down this fence, or tear down this hedge because it's just in the way. Well, you need to ask the question why it was there in the first place, all right? This is G.K. Chesterton. His theory was, don't ever tear down a wall until you know why the wall was placed there in the first place. It's not what's the wall doing there now, it's why was the wall put there 10, 15, 100 years ago. And if that danger or whatever is no longer in place, then you can go ahead and tear down the wall. But you don't tear down the wall because in the moment you think, well, what's the point of that? All right? Because you don't understand why it was placed there in the first place. And Chesterton says, until you know why the wall was first placed there, you shouldn't tear it down. Right? The one who quarries stones or lifts out stones, picks up stones, may be hurt by them, and the one who splits trees may be endangered by them. Again, quarrying stones, is that a good thing? Is that a productive thing? Or is that just, hey, I want to just go throw rocks in the air? All right? No. You're doing something productive. There is a reward to this, but there's also a risk. And you need to pay attention. Because in a poor leadership situation, who thinks about the risks? And again, this may go back to the slave versus the manager. The manager is thinking what? Better be thinking, I better do this the right way. Because nobody, he ain't thinking about this. He's not thinking about the risk. All he's thinking about is, I'm just going to do that. Somebody gets hurt, right, Benny? Every now and then. 0 days till the last accident. All right, it comes into play. All right, 10. If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen its edge, then one must exert more strength. However, the advantage of wisdom is that it brings success. All right? Axe is dull. What do you got to do to it? You need to sharpen it. But if you don't sharpen it, you have to work harder. Okay? What's the old saying? Work smarter, not harder. Okay? So if you'll take the time to sharpen the axe, you don't have to work as hard. All right? Put that into your faith. If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen its edge, then he must exert more strength. If your faith is dull and you do nothing about it, you have to work harder. It's not going to be as effective. Go your own health, your own fitness, nutrition. If your fitness is dull, you need to sharpen it. You need to fine-tune that a little more, all right? And that way you will be healthier, all right? And he applies this to wisdom. The advantage of wisdom is that it brings success, all right? Parasu, it literally means it brings overflow. So the wisdom is that sharpening of the person, right, which will bring that overflow, and so he won't have to exert himself nearly as much, right? Also works with intellect, by the way. If you're a dull person, dull-minded person, you probably need to read a book or something. Do something, all right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you'll take the time to sharpen the blade, it's much easier to teach. They learn more effectively. No, I agree. That's one thing we always learned. I learned it as prime the pump in teaching more than preaching, because I didn't really learn a whole lot in preaching class. But it was that idea of start the class with some questions, some illustration to sort of prime the pump, get them thinking. So, all right, 11. Interesting. If the snake bites before it is charmed, then there is no advantage for the charmer. You're just going to nod and go, yeah, that sounds good. Does it? If the snake bites before it's charmed, how can we apply this? In case you're wandering around with snakes and I was going to call that snake charmer and I totally forgot. Is this a matter of preparation? If the snake bites you before it is charmed, did you prepare well? Because evidently you got a charmer here on speed dial, and he just didn't get there in time. Yeah, let's not go with the wall thing. Jamie's shoeing horses. Is that a preventative measure? My horse blew a shoe out or blew a foot out or whatever. What good is the farrier for huh?
Logan better get there prompt and put it back on because I can't exercise the horse.
Hey, but if you've already broke the foot, what good's a farrier?
Oh, I thought you was talking about just slung the shoe.
I have no idea what I'm talking about. I don't know. Horseshoe, you throw it in things, right? That's about as much as I know about farriering.
Quick, make a sports reference.
Exactly, I know. That's what I got to go to. That's all I got.
That's why you tape your ankles before practice.
Thank you. If I can do that one. Yeah, if the player breaks his ankle, what good is a trainer? All right? That I got. I got that one. Yeah, and I think I just like the way it relates back to sort of the horse, breaking the horse. All right, if Jamie ain't broke the horse, he probably don't want to get on it yet. Okay? Because that's a lack of preparation, and what? It will lead to injury. Now, put that on a national scale. Now, it can be catastrophic on an individual scale, but put this into a national scale, like I said, this error of poor leadership, it gets bad real quick. All right, 12. The words from the mouth of a wise man are gracious, full of grace. All right, very, very much our word for grace. But the lips of a fool consume him. Literally, is to sink him. What do they say in the Navy? Loose lips sink ships. All right. Nothing fancy to this one. All right. 13. The beginning of the words of his mouth, the fool's mouth, is folly. But the end, or the last, eschatos, the last thing of his speaking is evil madness. Now, is there a difference between folly and evil madness? Yeah, I think you have a progression there, don't you? Somebody starts off talking foolishly, and they keep going. Is it going to get better? Yeah, they're almost like they're doubling down on this. They're making a choice to continue down this road. Yeah, and 14 says, yet the fool multiplies words. We were having a conversation with Holland, just driving her back to Dallas, and I don't even remember what we were talking about. We were talking about something where just our culture, the conversation of our culture in the last 20 years, I mean, do y'all know? Yeah, the progression. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we were basically just talking about the progression of what's happened. I mean, do y'all know 20 years ago, California voted to outlaw same-sex marriage? 20 years ago. Proposition 8, you can look it up. 20 years ago, that was California. And what's happened to our conversations? I mean, can you imagine a Supreme Court justice being asked, do you know what a woman is? And that person saying no. And I hate to, again, I don't want to get political. There's no reason for that. There's plenty of other examples to do. But do you see the progression? And then 14, yet the fool multiplies words. They're just doubling down. It's not like they're going, oh, you know what, you're right. This has gotten a little too much. No, yes, please stop talking. No, but they won't. Why? Because who's going to stop them? Good luck with that. That may go back to the ruler rising up against you. I mean, seriously, in our culture. And I tell Ashley gets so upset about all the politics stuff, and I'm like, baby, the friend of the media is never a hypocrite. Ever. They can say and do whatever they want. The friend of the media will always be covered. And they can continue to say more and more and more and more. And no one's going to stop them. I was actually watching a video. Jordan Peterson was interviewing some rabbi, and he asked, who can stop the progression of sort of the woke, whatever, I think he called it the woke theology, all right? And he said, really, it's adults. The adults. And he said, and I think the best solution for this is the church. And that's iffy, because is the church really going to stand up? It'd be nice if we did eventually. No, no. So, and he was talking to a Jewish guy, so it wasn't like he was saying, this is what I do. He was saying, really, the church is the best source of sort of cultural, political response, and how to say, no, this is sort of the firewall of, no, no, no. The circus may be in town, but you ain't got to go. All right? All right. 14. Okay, so the fool multiplies his words. No one knows what will happen, and who can tell anyone what will happen after him? Agree? That's pretty simple. 15. The struggles of fools weary them. And that word struggles, we've used this word a lot in Ecclesiastes. This is that daily struggle, the guy shoveling out the pen every day, doing it again. That's his struggle. That's his life, his amal, all right? The struggle of fools weary them, for they don't know how to go to the city. The implication is they don't even have enough common sense to go where it's safe. The struggle of the fool is it's really horrible. My life's horrible. My life's horrible. Here, let me take some drugs. My life's horrible. My life's horrible. It's horrible. Oh, let me go get drunk. All right? They don't have the sense to go into the city, which is where it's safe. All right? So the struggle of the fool continues to weary them, and it will continue to weary them. Why? Because they're not smart enough to go into the city, because they are a fool. Anybody know this guy? You're just a hamster on the wheel, man. Eventually, somebody's got to shove a fork in there and send you flying, all right? Because it's just the hamster wheel. And Solomon sees it 3,000 years ago. It's still happening today, isn't it? All right? 16. Two parts, 16, 17. Woe to you, land, all right? In the Greek, it's the word for city. In the Hebrew, it's the word eretz, which is the earth, okay? So it's kind of a land, a land mass, if you want to call it that. Woe to you, land, when your king is a youth and your princes feast in the morning. Okay, this word for youth is the word na'ar. It can be pretty much anything from 2 to 17, all right? But definitely a child, okay? David, when he fights Goliath, is described, yes, but you're just a youth, a na'ar, okay? And your princes feast in the morning. 17, let's see the contrast and we'll go back. Blessed are you, land, same idea, when your king is a son of nobles and your princes feast at the proper time for strength and not for drunkenness. Okay, so he kind of unpacks a little more about this. So when your king is a youth as opposed to a son of nobles. Now, couldn't a son of nobles be a youth? So what's the difference between a youth and a son of noble? Even if they're the same age, is one advantageous over the other? I'm just doing a little bit of politics. Presidents who don't have fathers are generally sort of haphazard and weak. If you go back and you study the presidents, and you look at the ones that had strong father figures, and I think you can see this in our recent history with Obama and with Clinton, neither one of them had father figures in their life, or fathers in their life, as opposed to sort of the George W. Bush father figure, all right? It's an interesting thing. When there's a father there to kind of guide the son, there's a little more stability to it, okay? The backside, this, and your princes feast in the morning. Why do you feast in the morning? Impulse. You wake up and you go, let's feast. And the implication is drink. In Proverbs, Solomon's going to write, when will it be morning so I can have another drink? So the impulse of the princes, the king is a youth, and the princes wake up and go, give me pleasure. Give me pleasure. Let me feast. I just want desire, okay? But Blessed, Makarios, this is Jesus' word for the Beatitudes here. Blessed are you, land, when your king is the son of nobles and your princes feast when? At the proper time, right? And look at the reasonings. Why? Why did they feast? One is for strength, okay? Now, not many of us eat because if we don't, we might die, okay? Most of us eat because it's 8, 12, or 5, or 6. Sorry, we're old. All right? You've seen this in the Bible. They eat something so you will be refreshed. That doesn't mean so your tummy won't growl. That means so you won't pass out, so you won't just dead, okay? And so this eating for strength was, I need to eat so I'll have enough energy to do what I need to do today and not pass out. I remember when I was in college, I used to work on a golf course, Tallahassee, Florida, middle of summer, working on a greens crew, all right? It's 400 degrees outside, 18,000 degrees, you know, the humidity, the chart won't even measure it. And we're out there working our butts off. And I remember we would get lunch, and I would eat every little scrap of anything that was on that plate to give me enough energy to get through the day. The joys of hypoglycemia, all right? So you just eat, and you just eat everything you can so you have enough strength. This is what he's saying. And not for drunkenness, the impulse, okay? Because what can happen to your city at this point? If your princes eat and feast just to get drunk on the impulse, all right? 18. Because of laziness, the roof caves in. Because of negligent hands, the house leaks. Agree? Anybody lived in that house before? Was not well taken care of? Again, let's relate this to our faith. Because of laziness in your discipleship, in your faith, in your spiritual disciplines, what happens? The roof caves in and you get leaks, all right? We can see this in our houses, in our marriages, in our families, all right? If you're lazy as a parent, your roof's going to cave in. And it really makes a mess, doesn't it? Anybody have their roof cave in? We were very lucky when the snowstorm came through. Our hot water heater over our garage started leaking, but because we were out in hooks, the water got cut off. If the water had continued to go, our roof above our garage and all of our cars would have collapsed, all right? And so we were very fortunate on that. But you can think about, again, all these other areas. Your faith in discipleship, your fitness, your physical fitness, all right? What happens when you're lazy with your fitness, all right? It doesn't go well for you, all right? Your family, your marriage, all of these things can come into play, okay? So again, a lot of good principles that we need to tap into here, all right? A feast is prepared for laughter, and wine makes life happy, and money is the answer for everything. How easy is that for Solomon to say? Is he being sarcastic? And this word can be bread. Bread is prepared for laughter. Wine makes life happy. And literally, silver is the answer for everything.
He didn't say it was a good answer.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He doesn't say it was a good answer at all.
You can answer anything with money. It doesn't mean it's the bread.
It makes things more convenient, but is it I guess you would have to dig into what the answer, what you mean by the answer, the solution, the panacea of all things is having money, all right? It is futile. So if he'd have left off the money as he answered everything, you would have gone, yep, I agree with you. Bread is for feasting, and wine does make life happy. But does it?
I do agree with you though, because money, but money in our life now, money is the answer, because if you don't have money, you don't have electricity. If you don't have money, you can't go to the doctor, you can't pay your medical bills, you can't put gas in your car. It's not that you don't have to have it, but you can have money and enjoy it responsibly.
Yeah, but he doesn't say that.
Well, and I think maybe it's not about the words that answer. Maybe it's about like what question you're asking. Like what is it the answer to?
Right. That's why I think you got to unpack the what does he mean by this is the answer.
And it doesn't say what is what he's spending it on or what he's doing with it.
Yeah.
He says money doesn't make you happy, wine does.
He ain't Baptist, that's all I know. I've never eaten bread and started laughing, so I don't know what that's about at all. Huh? Yeah. I think he had that switched. The wine is for laughter, and the bread makes me happy. Yeah, exactly. So that is not a Baptist verse right there at all. All right. 20, last one. Do not curse the king even in your thoughts. Don't even think that, all right? Don't even think about cursing the king. And do not curse a rich person even in your bedroom, in your chambers, inner chambers, all right? Why not? For a bird of the sky may carry the message, and a winged creature may report the matter. Anybody? Yeah, a little bird told me. All right, that's where we get this from. A little bird told me this is it. All right. Now, if you're hanging out with parrots, all right, maybe you got a little problem here, but the rest of these birds, I'm not sure. Again, we had a little issue with our daughter. She's working at some high-end shoe store in New York, and evidently these shoes are, in Holland's opinion, they're kind of knockoffs of like really, really expensive shoes or something.
Yes, they're $1,000 knockoffs of $4,000 shoes.
Okay.
So
And Holland's selling these
looks down on
shoes.
that.
Yes.
That's looked down upon in her.
And Holland was talking with her fellow employees and pointing out this information to this person who was utterly clueless, I guess. And I said, baby, you don't need to say that. You don't need to comment at all, because this employee may go to your boss and go, Holland is talking bad about our product, and that would give you a bad name. I mean, Shane, if somebody came in and says, I would never eat at Big Jake's barbecue, even if they commented on that to somebody else in the room and you overheard that, I mean, how would that work? I would never buy a Ford, all right? These things, they kind of mess, and the message is, don't even think it. Don't even think it, especially don't say it out loud, because a little bird might tell somebody. Again, risk, reward. And that's what I kind of tried to explain to Holland. I said, what reward are you going to get by telling this other clueless employee about the fashion shoe industry? There's exactly no, but there's no reward to this. But is there risk? So again, what's the risk in doing this? All right, because everybody gets it. You know, you want to feel like the smartest person in the room. You want to say the right thing. You want to do the right thing. You want to whatever. But you need to counter that with, okay, what's the risk if I do this? Okay? Interesting? No mention of God whatsoever. Not at any point, any of this. So, take it just a lot of good advice about foolishness and preparation and what can happen if you get the wrong leader in your family, in your business, in whatever. You need to be careful and watch for these things. So, all right, good enough? All right, come back with 11 and then 12 the following week, and then we're done. So, all right, let me pray for us. Father, thank you for letting us just sort of play with this passage tonight. Thank you for Solomon just being able to look out over these things and see these things. And I thank you for just the inspiration of your Spirit to help him to learn to write these things and to observe these things and to convey them to us so that we could really apply these to our own lives. I pray that your Spirit would give us the wisdom to know how to apply these 3,000-year-old principles so that we can truly be wise, so that we can be fearful of you, obedient to you, and that we would be successful because we carried out your practices and your doctrines and your pragmatic ideas. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.